Tonight, again, we're looking at our study, Living Without Disease, and we have covered a good bit of territory. We had a study where we dealt with living without disease, and then we did 8 steps to healthy living. And this is actually a part of the 8 steps to healthy living. Again, I want to recommend a book called Abundant Health by Julius Gilbert White. Abundant Health. I believe that this is an excellent material for us to study in light of Psalms 139, where it says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalms 139, verse 14. Also, another book, again, I recommend again, Itinerary of a Breakfast. If you're teaching health in any capacity, either to your children, or you're doing health lectures, health meetings, and the book Ministry of Healing. If you're those 3 books, primarily a book called Christian Temperance by James and Ellen White. If you are teaching on health in any capacity, Abundant Health, Julius Gilbert White, The Itinerary of a Breakfast, Ministry of Healing, Christian Temperance by Ellen and James White. The First Principles of Physiology by John Harvey Kellogg as well. These are excellent books for children, teaching them, that is, as well as for adults. Again, if you're doing a series of health meetings, these things are put in such a way where you can speak to the ministry of the body, brothers and sisters. And so, having said that, tonight, as we continue in our 8 steps to healthy living, we covered temperance. We touched a bit on nutrition, and nutrition is a subject that I believe needs to be touched on often and more thoroughly than we have done in these series of meetings. But nutrition has to be something that needs to be touched on at length, because I'm noticing that when you can look at articles online, blogs, you can listen to different health lectures, and everyone has this idea when they're teaching on nutrition. It generally comes from findings of the medical community. And again, not all of it is bad. Some of it you have to eat the fish and throw out the bones, no pun intended, but you have to, kind of sift through a lot of things. Because the interesting thing when it comes to nutrition, we say that we need to avoid this. You're hearing a lot of talk against the soybean. You're hearing a lot of talk against gluten and wheat and so forth and so on. And not to say that all of the information given is wrong, but I think the without the lack of understanding, that information can be misleading. What do I mean by that? Because the soybean in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with it. A lot of the soybean today, I believe they said 80% of the soybean is a GMO, genetically modified organism. And so in light of that, yes, we should leave the soybean alone. Yes, we should stay away from wheat, gluten, again, because most of the things in which we are consuming today are, again, GMOs. They have been modified. When you read the book Temperance, page 12, the book Temperance, page 12, we understand, let's see, it's not here, but if you look at the book Temperance and you look at page 12, you can see clearly that one of Satan's plans was to in the laboratories of nature, how he was able to create these poisons that we are consuming today. And so again, through science, falsely so-called, Satan again is working through the laboratories of nature, weakening man's body, thus weakening man's mind. And now we do not have the capacity to resist the onslaught in Satan's attacks. And so again, this is why I said we have to really understand the principles of how the body works. We must understand the nature of the food in which we're eating, so that we're not tossed to and fro with this or with that. And we must always be cautious when we are eating the so-called substitutes or alternative foods. When you look at the ingredients on the back and you see all of those added ingredients, many of them are not in their natural form, so thus it could have a reaction in the body, and it can still can cause many of the various diseases that we're seeking to avoid by staying away from the meat and processed food products. And again, the alternative, they are also processed. So again, be wise when you are looking at these particular things. Now, let's get to what we talked about. 8 steps to healthy living. And if you notice on your particular handout, you can look at the handout which says 8 steps to healthy living, which comes from the same handout, Living Without Disease. But nonetheless, one of the principles that we saw with overcoming disease is we saw that how are we to deal with disease? And we read this. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. Unhealthful conditions should be changed. Habits corrected. Then nature, the bodies, the immune system, the circulatory system, the nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities and to reestablish right conditions in the system. Again, we want to understand the systems of the body. Listen to your body. But if you don't know what you're listening for, it's like a mechanic or like a person who has a problem with a car. And you call a mechanic or you take it in. And what do they want to know? What is it doing? What sounds is it making? And you might say it's making this sound, but you might not know that that is the normal wear and tear and the sound that you're going to hear. If you're unaware, then the mechanic moves in and starts moving things around. And before you know it, you are paying more to fix the car than it was to purchase the car. So be wise when it comes to your body. They say, not scientists, but it is a well-known fact that one of the leading causes for bankruptcy is medical bills. One of the leading causes for people, common people, I should say, being bankrupt, losing their homes, is due to high skyrocketing medical bills. So to avoid these things, understand the body. You want to understand the body? Abundant Health, Julius Gibbard White, Itinerary of a Breakfast by J.H. Kellogg, and the book Ministry of Healing. So it says, now what are the steps to be taken? We looked at those steps. We just saw that. Now, we talked about temperance. And what did we say temperance was? Temperance, true temperance teaches us to dispense entirely with everything, not some, everything hurtful, and to use judiciously that which is healthful. So in maintaining health, temperance does not fall alone in the category of what we put in our mouths. Temperance can be in the way in which we go about our day. As a matter of fact, I'll give you an example. I was in Tampa the other day, and I dropped Pastor Kofer off maybe about 8 o'clock in the evening. And I decided from Tampa, 8 o'clock in the evening, to drive 7 hours to Augusta in temperance. That is intemperate. Again, it had nothing to do with my eating, but that was intemperate. Amen. And for 2 days, my head was just cloudy. Not a headache, but just like the body was saying, yes, okay, you slept for a couple of hours. That is not the type of rest I need. And so now I'm sort of straightening myself out. That's intemperance. I should have got a hotel, should have spent the night, got up in the morning, and then drove home. So an idea of intemperance. And again, a lot of people who drive long distances, truck drivers, intemperate due to the hours that they have to drive behind that wheel and the constant consuming of food to keep them awake, the caffeine and all the various things that they use to give them this false idea of energy to keep them awake. Nurses are genuinely intemperate. Why? Because of the amount of hours that they have to be on their feet. And what do you see a lot of times in hospitals? Nurses are just as sick as the individuals that they are supposed to be nursing. I've told you the experience being in the hospital, and a gentleman was there in the bed. I was visiting someone, and the nurse was asking him about his medication, and he had said he had not taken it because it makes him drowsy. And he only takes it at a certain time, because if he takes it during the day, then he's not able to do the things that he needs to do. And the nurse said, yes, I don't take my medication either. I wait till I get home because I can't drive. And I just glanced over and I said, isn't this? The nurse is on the same type of blood medication that he's on. Now he's in the bed, sick with IVs connected to his arm. She's up walking around, and she's supposed to be nursing him, but she's on the same medication that he's on. So genuinely, because of our lifestyles, that leads to a lot of intemperance. Pastors can be intemperate, as I just gave you the example of driving at that ridiculous time of the night. But nonetheless, we want to make sure that we're not just looking at food when we're talking about temperance, but what is our lifestyle? Do we have set times for going to bed? Do we have set times for waking up? Notice, we talked about nutrition, and I mentioned to you that nutrition is a subject that we really need to delve into more extensively than we have had in this season here that we've been dealing with these meetings. But it says many times, notice now, for nutrition, recovering disease now, recovering from sicknesses, ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And now today, we might need 2 ounces of prevention to deal with this, to deal with these issues that we find in our bodies. Because brothers and sisters, we're not getting stronger. The body is getting weaker. So it says nutrition, many times a short period of entire abstinence from food, followed by simple, moderate eating, has led to recovery through nature's own recuperative efforts. Okay, we get sick. Rather than looking for the soup, rather than looking for the teas, what we should do is we should dispense with all food. Why? Allow the body, the immune system, and the body's energies and vital force to focus on the problem rather than having to leave the problem and go deal with this breaking down and digestion of food, which is further weakening the body's ability to fight off the infections and the various, maybe the virus or something that is in the body. A light fast is, as it were. I'm not feeling good. Let me dispense a food. I will continue to supply the body with water, and we will see what needs to be done to work on that problem. Why? Because I want to assist nature. And so whatever I'm eating, the purpose is that it is assisting nature. It is assisting the system that God has designed, the immune system, to aid in restoring the body. How can I aid that system? Rest, sunlight, water. And there may be some things that we need to take in helping the body fight those infections. So laying off the food and letting the body work and recovering that issue. Notice, rest. Some make themselves sick by overwork. We're skipping now because I want to get to this point of water. Water, watch this, in health and in sickness. Pure water is one of heaven's choices, blessings. Its proper use promotes health. Its proper use promotes health. It is the beverage which God's provided to quench the thirst of animals and man. Drunk freely, it helps to supply the necessities of the system and assist nature to resist disease. Now, we think of water, and sometimes we think of it only when we are thirsty, only when we're outside. But I want us to think of water in light of a lake. All right, you go to a lake, and generally you see this green moss on the lake, and you might throw a stick and you pull it up, and the stick may be covered in all this goo and gook and all this type of stuff. But if you was to go to a stream, or you were to go to a river, generally you do not see all of that algae and things developing. Why? Because it's constantly moving. The water is constantly flowing. And the same thing when we think of our blood, which is 80% water. If we're not drinking the right amount of water, then the blood, it moves, but it becomes more like a lake rather than a flowing stream as it should be. And what happens when you get sluggish blood? Same way when you can look at traffic. When there is congestion, what happens? It begins to back up. That backing up, now what does it do? It begins to add a burden on the engines and the air conditioners and the gas. It just creates one problem after the other. And the same thing with our bodies. If our blood is not flowing the way it should be, because it is not given the proper amounts of water or liquid that needs to assist it in its flow, it begins to back up, and it begins to create other problems. It begins to throw the elimination system in confusion. Everything starts to back up as well. Watch this. It says, next paragraph, if you have this one, it says, there are many ways, watch this, there are many ways in which water can be applied to relieve pain and check disease. There are many ways. What are one of the ways that we can apply water to relieve pain and check disease? Generally, headaches. If you would start drinking more water. Now, again, this is not the silver bullet per se to deal with all of the issues, because there may be some other things attending to it. But generally, when the head starts to pound, rather than reaching for the Advil and the water, or the Advil and the soda, or the Advil and the juice, reach for the water, distilled water, purified water, and begin to drink water. not maybe one glass or two. You may have to drink some, and then you may have to rest. But due to our lifestyles, again, intemperate in one area leads to problems in the other. Well, Pastor, I can't stop and drink water and take rest. I'm working the conveyor belt, or I'm driving, or I'm doing this. I don't have time. I need the Advil to relieve the pain. Pain is gone, but the problem that brought about the pain is still allowed to fester in the system. And that's what we want to do. We want to we want to bind the strong man, the pain, the disease, and we want to be cast out. It says many ways. What is another way? Again, what can we do to assist nature with water? We can do what is commonly known as hot and cold treatments. And that is in the shower, taking hot showers, as hot as we can take it. As hot as we can take it for 3 minutes, and then turning it as cold as we can take it for 30 seconds, and doing that exchange maybe 3 times, even 4, and then covering ourselves up, and then getting up under the covers and allowing the body temperature to rise to fight that fever that you might be feeling at the time, the congestion that is beginning to pool in the head. You can put your feet in water as hot as you can take it, and wrap yourself and put something cool upon the head, again, which causes the blood to begin to circulate, to go to those warmer areas of the body, and begins to pull out that congestion from the head. But again, these are methods that God has given to take time. It doesn't work because, again, it's not just trying to take away the symptom and leave the cause. It wants to deal with the cause. And a lot of times, as we're doing that, we're relieving the symptoms, but we're also strengthening the system to deal with the cause as well. All right. So again, we understand this idea of water. It says the external application of water is one of the easiest and most satisfactory ways, watch this, of regulating the circulation of the blood. Reading one more time, the external application of water. What external application? We mentioned one, showers. We mentioned another, hot foot baths. And the third one is taking a bath. Taking a bath, resting in that water is a good way to cause the pores to open up. And that body begins to throw off impurities, and that blood, that circulation begins to even itself out. I know that in the wintertime, when I would have to leave to go, say I was doing a meeting in the evening, and it would be cold. And so what I would do, rather than taking a shower, you can take a bath. If your feet are always getting cold, take a bath and allow that circulation to become even in the body. So the external application of water is one of the easiest and most satisfactory ways of regulating the circulation of the blood. Now, I want you to notice, I'm reading here from the book Abundant Health, how the body uses food. And this is the chapter, how the body uses food. If you have the book, I believe it would be chapter 3. And I'm reading from page 26, because he has a very good understanding here that he shows us how water works, not only externally, but how it also works with our food. Why water is important. Not to drink it while we eat. Don't misunderstand me. We don't want to drink and eat, but we want to make sure that our body has the adequate amounts of water, because water is needed in the digestion and the proper digestion and elimination of our food. Notice this. He says this. The blood fluid of which a person, now he's giving you the amount of water. He says about 3/4 of the body is water. The blood fluid of which a person weighing 150 pounds has about 10 pounds or 5 quarts is 92% water. All right. So a person weighing 150 pounds has about 10 pounds or 5 quarts is 92% water. So the red blood cells are 65%. The white blood cells are 70%. The body cells, or the cells of our bodies, is 80% protoplasm, 75%. Saliva has about 3 pints, 99%. Gastric juice, 90. So he goes through all the different things, the amount of water that the body uses, or what percentages of various parts of our body is composed of water. White blood cells, red blood cells. He talks about the saliva, the gastric juice, the things that break down our food, the pancreatic juices, the liver, the skin, the kidneys, the brain, the nerves, the heart, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys. All these things are composed of predominantly water. That is the fluid. That is what he calls, that is the blood fluid. Water is needed externally, but it is crucial that it is internal. And many of us, even those who understand principles of health reform, we do not drink enough water consistently. We may do it 1 or 2 days, we may consistently drink water, and then we go periods of no water until we become parched and well nigh almost to death, and then we start looking for water. We generally don't drink enough water, and when we do, we generally drink it at the wrong times. All right, let me read this again. It says, water is the body's solvent. In cooperation with chemicals, it breaks down the food and prepares it for absorption and use in the cells. It is the medium of chemical activities in the body. It says, water is the medium of chemical activities in the body, which are legion. So now, the medium that causes activity inside our bodies, the medium is water. We eliminate water. What are we doing? We are eliminating the body to actively do what it needs to do internally. So water, brothers and sisters, is extremely important. Extremely important. Not just, oh, let me drink my water, but why? Understand why. God says his people are perishing for a lack of knowledge. And he says, because thou hast rejected knowledge. This knowledge is here, but we must understand why we do what we do, rather than just waiting for someone, oh, here, drink water. And we don't understand why we have to drink that water. So when we're not being told by some external force, another person, we don't do the things that we need to do. But if we understand it in principle, then as the body and the spirit moves, we understand why it is God is moving us to do what we do. Notice, action is a law of our beings. Inactivity is a fruitful cause of disease. So what is a fruitful cause of disease? What is it? Inactivity. What do we say about the blood? when it does not have the proper amounts of water, what does it do? It doesn't flow like a stream. It becomes like a pool or a lake. And what happens when you go to a lake or a pool that has stagnant water? You begin to see fungus begin to grow on its surface and on its bottom. It begins to grow around the edges. So what happens? We want our bodies not to be as a pool of blood. We want our bodies to be a stream of flowing blood, a stream of blood. And thus we must create an environment for that stream. Water, exercise. How will you know to drink more water? If you exercise, the body will naturally speak, time, give me more, and you will receive more water. But when we cut off our activity, then the need for water decreases. We increase our activity, we increase our need for water, and we become more conscious of the fact that we need to be drinking more water. Well, we often say, well, you know what? I'm a vegetarian, or I'm a vegan, I'm a health reformer. Therefore, exercise isn't really a necessity because I don't eat meat. I don't drink soda. I don't do this or that. And because I don't do this or that, therefore I don't need to do this. Well, again, you can be a good vegetarian or whatever you class yourself as. Inactivity is the fruit. What does it say? Inactivity is a fruitful cause for dis-ease. That's what inactivity is. And so we must, again, activity. Now, let me throw this in. This is not a commercial for going to a gym. As a matter of fact, when you begin to understand real exercise, you will dispense with your attendance to gyms. And I understand that generally maybe ladies may go to a gym because there's more people there. You may feel safer there. And you may not have anyone to really exercise with, and therefore you might need someone to exercise with to create a motivation to continue to do it. But again, and all of that is true. All of that is something that we must weigh and we must consider. But let's look at our daily, but what we want to do when we consider exercise, just take in your daily activities. Look at what you must and you do often. And again, we place ourselves, we begin to look at things and begin to prioritize our life. We want to prioritize our life. We want to begin to shave back on things that are not essential. If I'm going to be on the computer, they have created now, some offices have created treadmill offices, meaning that the desk and the bot and they stand up and they're on a treadmill. So it's like they're constantly walking at a very slow pace and they're still able to type. It keeps them invigorated. It helps them mentally. Why? Because people are studying and they understand how can they get more productivity. Sometimes it might not necessarily even be, and I would say maybe 99.9% is not to do with their desire to keep you healthy per se, but simply to keep you healthy so that you can make them more money and be more productive. This is why generally in factories, this is why they generally keep it cold. I mean, it's freezing in factories, especially when you're working with furniture and other things. Not because they just want it cold, but again, if it's cold, then the mentality is I must continue to move to stay warm. If they make it too comfortable, then that slows down productivity. So if they keep it cold, then you work faster because you want to stay warm. They study the mind. So what do they say? How can we get greater productivity out of our office people? Let's create a treadmill at office. Let's create a movable office. So they're constantly on their feet. They're constantly exercising. Endorphins or things are constantly being moved. The monotony of the day is broken. And before you know it, they're able to do more because they're more invigorated. They're not sitting down. There's no possibility to start dozing. But if you're standing up and constantly moving, you're going to constantly be working the mind. So the thing is, not that you need to go out and buy a $3,000 treadmill office, but the thing is, how can you incorporate activity in your day? And that's the key. Activity. How can you be active? What can you do in your home per se? You can clean. Not to sound cheap, but you can clean in your home. If you want, you can buy those little mats and you can exercise in your home. You can open the windows, you can be on the porch, and you could be getting fresh air. You could be listening to something on the Bible. You could be listening to Spirit of Prophecy. You could be listening to a sermon, and you can be drinking water. And again, you're right inside your space, but yet you're creating this activity for yourself. If you have a yard, you can walk around the yard. You can do many things to be active. That's the key thing. We want to be active. And a lot of times going to a gym gives you this false idea that you're becoming active because you go there for about 2 hours. And most of the 2 hours you're there, you're mostly on the treadmill, watching the news, watching television, watching something that you shouldn't be watching. And then this idea, yes, I exercise. Then you go home and you eat more and you become more inactive because you have this false idea that if I could just go to the gym and watch television for 2 hours, now all of a sudden I'm starting to be healthy. The key is we want to be active. So it says, inactivity is a fruitful cause of disease. Exercise quickens, vitalizes what? The circulation of the blood. But in idleness, the blood does not circulate freely, and the changes in it, so necessary to life and health, do not take place. All right. So again, inactivity increases circulation. What else does it do? It increases the desire for water. It increases desire for water. What does exercise? That water, that invigorating exercise, what does it do? It creates a desire for rest. It creates a desire for good sleep. So we see how each are tied into each other. Activity is the key. Notice the statement. Outdoor exercise is the best. Those whose habits are sedentary, meaning you are secretary, you do things around the house, you're constantly in the office, you might be walking up and down the hallways. You would say, well, I'm exercising. I got to walk from this building to this building. Yeah, but it's a stroll. It's not even, you just kind of, and depending on how you walk, it could be a swag. And you're just moving from one side to the other. Those whose habits are sedentary should, when the weather will permit, exercise in the open air. Notice now, every day, summer and what? Winter. So summer or winter, we should, when the weather permits, be in the open air. Doing what? Being active is the key. It says walking is preferable to riding, driving, for it brings, what does walking do? It brings more of the muscles into the exercise. Wait a minute. So again, riding, yes. Is it increasing your circulation? Yes. Is your heart rate going up? Yes. But primarily, it is the legs. That is, yes, you're being still, you're holding the handlebars, you are using the muscles, but when you walk, it causes more of the muscles to be brought into the exercise. When you start really walking and exercising for the first time, muscles will begin to hurt that you didn't even know existed. You didn't even know they existed. Now, what's interesting is around this idea of walking. I remember being in California. One of the young Bible workers came to us, and she was on the overweight side, and we would exercise. And I remember that as we would go exercising, Pastor Kofer would take us on this long trail. We would walk through the community, and we would walk. And the young lady that was there, it was me and a sister by the name of Amanda. And we would walk with the sister, and I would always be in the back with her. And I said, this is what I want you to do. And because she would always, I think the first maybe week or so, she would, always come in dead last. I mean, we're, in the house, probably some have already taken their showers, and here she would come. So what I started doing, I said, okay, this is what I want you to do. We're going to walk. And she would walk and I would just tell her, hey, just walk at your own pace. Don't try to keep up with nobody. I said, now, this is what we're going to do. I said, when we get to this fire hydrant probably was maybe about 15, 20 yards ahead of us. I said, now, get yourself ready. When we get to that hydrant, we're going to push it. We're going to push it from that hydrant maybe about 20 yards. And I said, we're going to push it as fast as we can, walking now, not jogging, walking from this point to this. And we say, okay, get ready. And we would get to there and we say, let's hit it. And she would walk and we would walk. And I said, all right, slow down. All right, rest, relax. We didn't stop, but we said, okay, now go back to walking your pace. And she would walk her pace and walk her pace. And I said, all right, when we get to that corner, we're going to pick it up again. And we're going to walk from here to there. And it was again maybe about another 20 yards. And we said, we're going to push it. And that's what we did. And we got to that corner and we pushed it for about 20 yards. Next thing you know, all right, relax. Let's just walk at our pace. And we did that with this young lady for maybe about 2 or 3 days. Before the week was out, she was no longer coming in last anymore. She was actually out walking other people. Not because we were on her like drill sergeants, but again, she would get to a point and we would just encourage her to just go beyond what you think you can do and relax and just walk at your pace. Then get to another point, push it, and then relax. And then get to another point and push it. And before you know it, the whole distance, which was probably about a good maybe 2 miles we would walk every morning, maybe sometimes longer than that as the days went on, we would increase our track through the community. So probably by the end, we probably were walking about a good 5 miles anywhere, every morning. But again, this young lady could not keep up with the rest of us. But just in 1 week's time of that type of walking, she was able to keep up. Now, it wasn't just the exercise. The nutrition came into play. What happened now? That walking, what did it do? It increased the desire for water. And the walking, the water, the resting, the simple meals that she was eating. By the time this young lady left, within 3 months' time, she had drastically slimmed down. Why? Brothers the same way. Drastically slimmed down. Why? These simple steps. Now, a lot of times with men, it's a little more of a fight, because we're concerned about our physique and we want to make sure we look good and all these other things. But nonetheless, exercise, activity is the key. And brothers and sisters, and sometimes we can, and maybe we even should, create these support groups so that we can talk, we can encourage each other, we can set goals, and then being able to come in a capacity where you're able to talk through Skype or whatever the case may be, and everybody just talk and chime in and say what they've done, keeping each other accountable so that we are glorifying God in these temples. Let me finish this. It says, walking is preferable to riding or driving, for it brings more of the muscles into exercise. The lungs are forced into healthy action. Why the lungs? Because often we are shallow breathers. Babies are deep breathers, but the older we get and the habits that we develop, we become very shallow breathers. Opera singers and they are deep breathers. A lot of times people who have to use their voices become deep breathers. They learn how to breathe like a baby in order to get those notes out and to hold those tones. So here it is. The lungs are forced into healthy action since it is impossible to walk briskly without inflating them. In other words, you cannot walk at a good speed, unless you are truly inflating the lungs, taking in oxygen, and breathing off those impurities, those carbon dioxides. Last part, trust in divine power. The requirements of God must be brought home to the conscience. Men and women need to be impressed with the fact that all their powers of mind and body are the gift of God and are to be preserved in the best possible condition for His service. Last part, apart from divine power, no genuine reform can be effected. Human barriers against natural and cultivated tendencies are but as the sandbank against the torrent. Not until the life of Christ becomes a vitalizing power in our lives can we resist the temptations that assail us from within and from without. Understanding, brothers and sisters, that we are fighting habits that are embedded in us. They are pathways that are deeply formed in our minds so that when we would do good, evil is present. We know what we should do, but we find it easier to do what we ought not to do because of those pathways. Therefore, not until the life of Christ becomes a vitalizing power in our lives can we resist the temptations that assails us from within and from without. So, brothers and sisters, again, 8 steps to healthy living. This is part 2 of our last study on 8 steps to healthy living. Now, again, as we close, we want to continue to review these subjects. I think, again, nutrition is extremely important to us, extremely important. And many people are perishing because of a lack of proper nutrition. And because we do not understand these principles, we have become the sport of false science. We have become the sport of false science, of men and women practicing on us. And to add insult to injury, many times people who give health talks borrow from this false science and they preach it as though it is the gospel, thus confusing the people even further. So again, we want to understand the principles upon which we have been given by our intelligent Creator, so we can understand how we can glorify God in these bodies which are His.
You've been listening to gospel media recorded by Everlasting Gospel Bible School with Pastor Darren Tinsley. To contact, support, or obtain similar media from Everlasting Gospel Bible School, contact us at P.O. Box 204-209, Augusta, Georgia 30917, or call us at 706-421-7719. And lastly, on the web, visit us at egbibleschool.org. Again, that's egbibleschool.org. May God richly bless you.